What's up guys, Matt Moniz here, and in my hands I have the OnePlus X. Now this is OnePlus's latest offering, which is aimed towards the mid-range and budget price market. Now this phone retails for $250 US or $329 Canadian. OnePlus is on a mission to offer high-end phones for an affordable price. Now let's find out if this one is actually worth it. Most phones for $250 or less don't look that great. They're either bulky, made of all plastic, or have no design effort. The OnePlus X is the total opposite. It's a very nice looking phone. It has a metal trim like its more expensive sibling, the OnePlus 2, and instead of a removable plastic back cover, it's sports glass instead. In fact, it reminds me of a mix between the iPhone 4 and the Sony Xperia Z Compact, which in my books looks absolutely great. It's also easy to hold due to the small 5-inch form factor and rigid edges. And just like the OnePlus 2, it has the same volume toggle on the left side of the phone, which lets you switch between no interruptions, priority, and all notifications. There's no fingerprint scanner on the front like the 2, but that's okay. At this price point, I wasn't expecting one. The right side has the dual SIM card and micro SD card tray, and below is the volume controls and power button. The bottom houses the dual speaker grills, but only one of them has an actual speaker. Overall, I am really impressed with the design of the OnePlus 2. It's definitely a very good looking phone, and in fact, I think it looks just as good as some of the higher end models that are currently on the market. Now, there are a few things I want to mention. The first thing, because it's made out of glass, it does attract fingerprints. The second thing is that OnePlus has gone ahead and pre-installed a screen protector, which will help protect your screen from getting scratched. And finally, the device actually comes with its own case inside of the box. Now these are obviously not a big deal, but they're nice little touches which add a little bit more value to the phone. The display is up next, and it's a 5-inch AMOLED 1080p screen with a resolution of 1920 by 1080 and 441 pixels per inch. The screen gets really bright at 50% brightness. It feels brighter than most displays that I've used on the market today. The color reproduction is not bad. If you like the oversaturated colors of an AMOLED panel, then you'll be happy with this one. It's not as good as the AMOLED panel on the Galaxy S6 or Nexus 6P, but more reminiscent of an AMOLED panel from last year. Blacks are deep, viewing angles are good, and it's probably the best display you'll get on a phone at this price point. Below the display are 3 capacitive buttons, one for home, back, and to access your recent tabs menu. Unfortunately, they're not backlit. It seems like a cheap thing to leave out, but if this bothers you, you can enable the on-screen buttons in your settings menu. And below those capacitive buttons on the bottom lie the speakers. Like I mentioned before, there's 2 speaker grills, but only one of them houses the actual speaker. The other is just there for aesthetics. The sound quality is nothing special. It gets loud enough, but I found the volume to distort at higher levels. Inside is the Snapdragon 801 processor and Adreno 330 GPU. The phone is fast, fluid, and I never experienced any slowdowns during my time using it. The 3GB of RAM inside allows me to juggle multiple CPU-intensive apps with ease, and games launch fairly quickly. The bottom line is you're getting last year's hardware in a package today that's aimed towards the mid-range market. The performance of the phone is still great, it's still capable, it's still very smooth, and if you like to game, you will be happy with the performance. Now there are a few things that I do want to mention. The first thing, that it does not come with 5 GHz Wi-Fi, so you're stuck using the 2.4 GHz range. Next up, it's lacking NFC, so if you're someone who likes to use Android Pay or pairs their devices using NFC, you might be disappointed. And the third one, which in my opinion is the most important, especially here in North America, is lacking LTE bands 12 and 17. So if you're on T-Mobile, AT&T, or even Rogers here in Canada, you might be missing some coverage. And I also just wanted to mention that I did do a bunch of benchmarks on this phone, and instead of including them in the review and wasting everyone's time going through all of them, I have included them on my website, which I'll place a link down below in the description. Moving on to the software, and the X is running Android 5.1.1 and OnePlus's bloat-free theme called Oxygen OS. It's pretty much stock Android, or at least close to it. OnePlus has included a few software tweaks, such as being able to change the color theme from light to dark. You can also take advantage of a few gestures, such as writing an O on the screen to open the camera app, or double tap to wake up, and even draw a V to access the flashlight. It also has an ambient display, so you can see your notifications when they come in or if you move your phone. If you use the OnePlus 2 or the OnePlus 1, then you'll feel right at home with the OnePlus X. Battery life is pretty good too, considering it has a small 25 mAh battery. I was able to get a full day's worth of use with about 3 hours of screen on time. I once got it to 4 hours, but 2.5 to 3 seem more typical. My days start at 5:45 a.m. and end about 10 p.m., and I'm usually left with about 15% battery life. Unfortunately, because this is using the 801 chip, there is no quick charging or wireless charging. It will take you about 2 hours to fully charge your phone. The OnePlus X ships with 16 gigabytes of internal storage and a micro SD card slot capable of holding up to 128 gigabytes. And like its bigger brother, the OnePlus X has a 13 megapixel rear-facing camera, but it doesn't use the same sensor. Instead of the OmniVision sensor, OnePlus has decided to use the Samsung ISOCELL module, which has an aperture of 2.2 and no optical image stabilization. The camera is nothing special. It produces good photos in bright light. They look great on the AMOLED display, but once you really look at them on your computer, you start to notice the extra noise, and a lot of the time the camera tends to overexpose. Low light is hit or miss, and the odd time you get a good photo, but mostly not so great ones. HDR helps in both daylight and low light, but of course your subject needs to be standing still. The front has an 8 megapixel camera and it does a fine job for selfies. It has a beauty mode which is on by default, which helps smooth out your complexion. And finally, the OnePlus X can also record up to 1080p video, and because it doesn't have OIS, you get a lot of noise and camera shake. So here are my final thoughts, and I'm going to start off with what I liked about the phone. I love the price point. It has a very attractive price point. I also like the fact that the phone looks really good, and I also think it looks a lot better than some of the high-end phones that are currently on the market. It has a good display, and it has very good battery life as considering the size of the battery itself. And finally, I love the software experience. It's a very clean, very stock-like Android experience with a few gestures and customizations that a lot of people will appreciate. Now here's the things that I didn't like. I don't like the camera. At the same time, if they did put a more expensive camera inside, it would increase the cost of the phone. I also didn't like the fact that it's missing LTE 12 and 17, which I think are very important to North America. And finally, I still can't stand the OnePlus Invite system. I really hope eventually that they can get rid of it and offer the phone to everybody whenever they want. Overall, this is a very good phone, especially for $250 US or $329 Canadian. I really don't think you can find much else for that price point that will beat this phone. I want you guys think of this phone in the comments below. If you guys have a OnePlus X already, let me know what you like and dislike about it. I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, smash that like button. If you're new to the channel, feel free to subscribe. And as always, I will see you in the next video.